Okay. All right. Good evening, everybody. My name is Ron Snyder. I am with the Department of Public Works and Transportation's Communications Department. And thanks you everyone for joining us today for this meeting to discuss safety improvements along Honeygo Boulevard and Crossroad. Again, go to the next slide, Beth. So again, we're going to have a eventful conversation. We're going to go over everything. We're going to try to answer everyone's questions. We're also going to be respectful of everyone's time and try to wrap this up as close to 6 o'clock as possible. We're going to ask that people remain muted when not talking. Again, we have a chat box here, so if anybody has any questions, please ask them as we're going through the presentation. And once we get through the presentation, if those questions haven't been answered, we'll make sure that they're answered as well. And again, just to let everybody know, this meeting is being recorded. And once this meeting is done, we'll work in the next day or so to get this recording posted on the Baltimore County Government YouTube page. So you can go back and watch it. And those that were not able to be here can go back and watch it as well. So with that said, I would like to introduce our director, Lauren Buckler.
Good evening. I'm Lauren Buckler. I'm the Director of Public Works and Transportation. We are excited to be able to talk to you about what's going on with this project. I know there's a lot of interest. We've got the experts on the phone with us. You'll hear from Virginia Collier, who is our Chief of Highway Design. And we will also hear from Chris Nebre, who's one of our traffic engineers. But first, I'm going to turn it over to Councilman Marks. He has joined us to make sure that he can give his insight on this to you as well. Councilman Marks.
Thank you very much, Lauren, and thank you everyone for joining us. Again, I'm Councilman David Marks, and just by way of context, a little bit of history about this road. This road was built in the late 1990s. The idea was to pull traffic off of Chapel Road and a lot of the localized roads. And, it's a very busy corridor. It brings a lot of traffic from Harford County. I think in retrospect, there's things that we all wish Baltimore County had done in the 1990s and 2000. I'm very happy that the funding for the circle is in the budget. And I want to repeat that. The funding for the traffic circle is in the budget. But as Lauren is going to, and her staff are going to tell you, it's taking a whole bit longer to get the right of way for this project. So we want to go over some interim ideas for this through this presentation. I'm mainly just going to step back and listen. But I do want to thank the Department of Public Works and Transportation. I want to thank the County Executive's Office, and I want to thank all of you. There were a lot of people who signed a petition to do something about this intersection. I don't know if Tracy Mason's on the call, but she led that up. And that really has helped us secure the money for this. So with that, I'll turn it back over to DPWT. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Marks. I'm going to turn it to our Chief for Highway Design, Virginia Collier, who's going to talk about some of the history here and background on this project.
Thanks, Lauren. So again, a little background why we're here tonight. I'm sure all of you are aware there's been expressed safety concerns for those on Crossroad attempting to go straight or turn left onto Honeygo. There were several safety options that were explored in the past few years, including a traffic signal, a roundabout, and then the installation of flexi-posts for restricted movements at the intersection. So you can see the video there of some of the existing traffic, and you can go to the next slide, Beth. Our existing conditions out there, we're located south of Angel Park, north of the Honeygo Village Center. It's 2 lanes on Honeygo in each direction. North side of Honeygo is divided. It's approximately 20,000 vehicles per day, which is, as Councilman Mark said, fairly heavy traffic on this corridor. It's classified as an urban arterial, and it has a 40-mile-per-hour posted speed. Crossroad is a collector road, that's its function, and it only has about 1,800 vehicles per day with a posted 30-mile-per-hour speed. The only controls existing at this intersection is a stop condition on Cross Street. So the speed and volume of vehicles on Honeygo make left turns and through movements fairly difficult for drivers on crossroad. It leads them to take unnecessary risks after waiting on cross for acceptable gaps. We do have, a crash history in this corridor. There was about 17 in the last 5 years, and that's 17 recorded crashes, I'll state. So these are all police recorded crashes. So obviously, if people have fender benders and don't call in the police, that might not be captured fully here. Most common type of crashes are straight movement and angle crashes. So anyone on cross attempting to go straight, those appear to be the most common. So those are the existing conditions. As I said, we did explore a couple different options. The first one we looked at was a signal. So I'm going to pass it on to Chris Neeb right now to discuss the signal.
Hi, I'm Chris Neberry, Division Chief Traffic Engineering. Yes, we have evaluated this intersection many times throughout the past years, most recently in 2019, 2022, and 2024, where we collected all-day traffic volume data, and we analyzed them against the signal warrants that are laid out by the Federal Highway Administration. So the warrants are a criteria that is used to evaluate whether a signal is justified for installation. And there are many other several other different categories. We call them warrants, and we evaluated it against each warrant. So warrant number 1 was 8. But before I get to the warrant, we just want to say that unjustified signals could increase if a signal is not warranted and is installed. It could the risks are increased excessive delays on both streets and increased rear end crashes because of this the stop queuing, rear end collisions, and also an increased risk of aggressive driving because of signals. So moving on, I will explain each warrant and what we are looking for and whether they were met. So the first warrant is an 8-hour vehicular volume warrant. So it needs to sustain a certain volume on the main street and the cross street for 8 hours. It does not have to be consecutive. However, those warrants were not met. The second warrant is a 4-hour volume, which has a higher threshold for the 4 as opposed to the 8 hours. However, only 4 hours need to be met, and that also was not met for 4 hours. The third warrant is a peak hour warrant volume, where if there's a 1 hour heavy traffic during the day, where the minor streets suffers undue delay entering the major street. These are typically used for major traffic generators such as factories, office complexes, and there's something with high occupancy where there's a large discharge of vehicles, like in shifts, like in the Amazon plant. However, that peak hour volume was not met at this intersection. The fourth warrant is for pedestrian volume, and there was not enough pedestrian volume in this at this intersection to warrant the signal. Warrant 5 is similar. It's school crossing, and it's appropriate where there's where school children cross a major street, and the typical threshold's about 20 children during the highest crossing hour, and that was not shown to in the activity of our data collection. The next warrant is signal coordination, is where there is predominantly one-way travel for signals. However, the signals are too far for platooning, so it did not meet for this warrant. The seventh warrant is the crash history warrant. This is just because something hits the number of crashes does not automatically activate this warrant. We have to show that adequate trials of alternatives have been tried at this intersection, and the threshold is 5 or more crash types that are correctable by the traffic signal. And also, there's still a volume component to this crash history warrant. However, the thresholds will be reduced to 80% of the 8-hour warrants. And if all those were met, we would get the crash warrant, and the crash warrant was not met. Next warrant is the road network warrant, where the volumes at an intersection of major routes meet both condition A and B from the 8-hour warrant, and they were not met. And the last warrant is intersection near a grade crossing. That's for rail, but there is no railroad tracks nearby, so that was not met here. So without the traffic signal, a roundabout was proposed. So may I, next slide. So the plan should call for a 2-lane roundabout, because a single roundabout would have caused more congestion on Honeygo with 2 lanes of traffic merging into one. So a 2-lane roundabout was more appropriate for this location. This roundabout includes crosswalks and pedestrian refuge islands. So it does make it more pedestrian friendly. And with landscaping and a central island, we would hope that that would cause a more neighborly feel and just better features for slowing down traffic also. Late fall 2025 was the anticipated final design. It was the final design. But however, notice to proceed for given land acquisitions to occur, and neighboring properties may be contacted soon. Okay. So as of now, without the roundabout in place and trying to still address the issues at hand, we have proposed alternatives. So the alternatives we have proposed is a flexi-post installation. Something of this configuration has been installed in the Baltimore County area. If you've been to like the Perring, I believe it's Perring and Cedar Hill, where you can see an example of this, where flexi posts have been used to restrict certain movement of traffic moving onto a major road. So in this example, you see that flexi posts restrict the through movement along cross traffic and also left turns onto Honeygo Boulevard. So here's a simulation. It's hard. Okay, there's the flexi post where cars would travel, but it will only restrict the movements without going through the flexi post. So left turn movements are still allowed along Honeygo Boulevard onto Crossroad. However, from Crossroad, they are now restricted to right out movements only. Okay. So here, yes, the example I was speaking of is the one that was installed along Perring Parkway at Cedar Hill. So that's the example there. I think we have the next exhibit. It just shows anticipated travel times. Yeah, anticipated travel times, detour times for those not able to make those movements anymore. They're showing additional travel times ranging from 2 to 6 minutes, depending on what route and where you're trying to go. Yeah, that's and then yeah, just for like quick review. So heading south on Cross, what's it called? Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay, Chris.
Right.
Yeah, there's a couple different detour options that you could take, and obviously, being local users, you might take your own that aren't depicted here. But on average, the increase in travel time is fairly minimal for avoiding these movements on this intersection, and they're bringing you to other major intersections that can, support the traffic and move it through, and navigate those intersections safely. So that's primarily what these detour routes show. But again, sometimes local users will use other paths. You can go to the next slide, Beth. So overall, as Chris explained, the traffic signal warrants were not met. We did, as you said, we've looked at them several times. We've done counts several times over successive years, most recently being this past March, and the warrants did not met. So right now our options are, we have the roundabout, as Councilman Mark said, we are funded for the roundabout. We're still proceeding with design. That is a proven method of reducing like the frequency and the severity of the crash type that we see out in this intersection, as opposed to a signal which would not resolve some of the crash types that we're having. This works by reducing the conflict points that cars have with each other, and also promotes lower speeds on Honeygo at this intersection, and along the corridor itself promotes kind of an element of traffic calming in there. But land acquisition is necessary to construct. It is a 2-lane roundabout, so we do have to expand the right-of-way to support the roadway and support the pedestrian connections in that area. The approximate construction time is much longer than a flexi-post option. It's about 2 years. And there is always driver acclimation with any new geometric design on the roadway. Our other option is the flexi posts, and this is something that would also eliminate our conflict points, which are the left turns and the straight movement on Cross Road. There is not any land acquisition that's necessary. It's something that can be installed fairly quickly in the next few months. There is some initial driver acclimation. Again, with any change in pattern, there's going to be some acclimation, and there are alternate routes that are necessary, but we have analyzed it and they are able to support the traffic. And this is something that could become more of a permanent feature in the future. So while we are still proceeding with the roundabout, we've heard from the community that they're uncomfortable with the amount of right-of-way acquisition that may be needed. So we are promoting this flexi-post option again to see if it's something that the community would be receptive to, if they have questions about, if it's something we could try in the meantime. So that's part of why we are here, is just to re-promote this option and see if there is any reception to trying it in the meantime. So with that, I'll hand it back to Lauren.
I'm seeing a lot of chats popping up in the chat box, which is great that people are engaged and have questions about this. I want to make sure I clarify a few things. We are going to continue with the design and right-of-way process of the roundabout. We have funding for it. We've been moving along that path. But the right-of-way process, which is acquiring property from private property owners, takes time, and we're working through that process. So what we are looking at is, could we put these flexi posts in place now to help with the issues at this intersection? We hear you that there's issues. We see that there's issues. We've seen the videos. We've seen the police reports, and putting in those flexi posts would solve 100% of those issues and make that intersection much safer. And we could get those in the very near future while we continue to work on the roundabout. I'm seeing a lot of questions, and we'll go through some of these in more detail about the traffic signal. The traffic signal, there's specific calculations you have to do, which are this warrant analysis that Chris explained. The warrant analysis has 9 different categories with calculations. And this particular intersection does not meet in any of those categories. I'm seeing Justin's chat box for some reason on Beth's screen. So Beth, if you can go back to the slides. We've looked at the traffic light. We've studied it multiple times. It doesn't meet the federal requirements. The federal requirements are then adopted into state law, and Baltimore County has to follow state law. So what happens if we don't follow the law? There are plenty of studies available that show if you install a traffic light where it doesn't meet these federal standards, which again, we can't do because it's the law in Maryland, you actually increase accidents. So I just want to make sure we are very clear on that. Signal does not meet. We can keep asking questions about it, but it doesn't meet. We've studied it multiple times over the last 10, 20 years. It has never met. I'm very familiar with this area. I live in this area. I drive through this intersection on a regular basis. There's just very limited traffic on Cross, which is why it hasn't been meeting it. So I just want to make sure we're clear there. There's also been a lot of questions in the chat on flashing yellow lights. A flashing yellow traffic light has to meet the same warrants as a regular traffic light. So again, traffic lights are off the table. It's not an option. It doesn't meet the volumes unless something were to change drastically in the volume of traffic on Cross, which would probably have to be major development to ever get to the volumes that would make it meet. And I guess I will ask Ron and Beth to pull any of the questions that we didn't touch on that are not traffic light related, since again, doesn't meet it, can't do it.
Okay, I will start looking over the questions here. I'm going to start at the top, just kind of work our way down. Oops, give me a second here. Has the intersection of Honeygo Boulevard and Gunpowder Farm Road been considered for a traffic signal? Much more traffic here than on Cross Road.
That has been brought up, and we are actually going to conduct a study this fall when school gets back in.
How many vehicles coming out of Perry Hall Farms and the Winder condominiums compared to Cross Road?
We haven't studied that intersection, so we can't give you those numbers at this point. But as Chris just mentioned, we're going to study that other intersection, which may be the one that's being asked about in that question.
There are 4 more developments going up right off of Honeygo. One is off of Cross. Gerst Farms will have a large number, and off of Ryan Meadow will be single family with more cars. Will you reevaluate again?
I think we'd have to look at where those roads are and where they enter. I know the one, I think one of the other chats I saw mentioned the one down by Joppa View. That wouldn't impact the traffic on Cross with where that development is routing. We can look at the other ones that are being mentioned. But the other thing to mention is every time there is a development, the development comes through DPWT to review the traffic study that goes with the development on where it's loading traffic, what it's doing to intersections, and then if we require improvements related to that development traffic-wise. So every development is analyzed when it comes through the county.
How often were these traffic or warrant checks performed? Was it one day of viewing the intersection and measuring these warrants, or was this over the course of multiple days?
It was one day, but it was the full day of traffic.
We talked about the traffic lights. I believe it was mentioned that there were 17 reported crashes over a 5-year period. In any years have 5 or more crashes within a 12-month period.
So the crash history is part of the warrant analysis for the signal. Again, it doesn't meet. So we've looked at the crash history, we pulled that data. It doesn't meet in any of the 9 criteria. One of the calculations in the warrant analysis is the crash history, and it doesn't meet in that criteria, but it doesn't meet in any of the 9 criteria.
Okay, we've talked about the warrants. Is Baltimore County considering the revised warrants provided in the latest MUTCD 2023? Although this version may not be adopted yet by SHA, neither of these roads are state maintained. The new MUTCD has made some subtle changes to signal warrants.
So Chris, can you address what year of MUTCD?
I believe we used the software that was based off maybe the previous warrant. However, I mean, we could look in what slight differences they were occurring. I don't think the differences would have been that much.
Are there any concerns with flexi posts as it relates to emergency services? How can they access these neighborhoods?
So there's a GPS, GIS system that is within county government, used for emergency services, used for 911. We feed information into that as there's changes in road conditions so that 911 has the most updated information. So no, obviously it's not installed right now. Prior to its installation, that information would be funneled over to emergency services.
Do we have any accident data? There's 255 plus communities in the area. What is the accident data on older persons and roundabouts?
I've never seen anything that specific. Virginia or Chris?
Can I say something, Lauren?
Sure.
I mean, one of the compelling reasons for the Gerst Farm development being 55 and up, in addition to the fact that it won't have an impact on schools, is aren't seniors the least mobile driving population? I mean, it seems to me that that will have less traffic than a conventional development there.
Chris, is that taken into account in a senior community?
That would be, yeah, the land use would be, it'll be reflected in the land use if in the traffic impact study, if it's like a senior home.
Next question. Forge and Honeygo is now more dangerous and has always been harder to make a left from than cross, so people don't do it. Those along Forge will be in a worse spot if we avoid. And talked about the light. Flexi posts are what I had pushed to install to not make a left on Franklin Square Boulevard by Canton Car Wash. Okay, this is not an intersection, not a good solution. Oh, I'm sorry. Could a temporary signal be considered in the interim if roundabout is being held up due to right-of-way acquisitions? I think we kind of talked about why we couldn't do that, correct, Lauren?
Correct. No signals. Doesn't mean.
Okay.
So also just to
Okay.
explain that a little bit further on the signal issue, there's studies that show that there will be increased accidents if you put a signal where it isn't warranted. This location isn't warranted. So what would happen is if you went and, we can't do it because we're in Maryland, but there's other states that may have different rules. If you went and did it, anytime there's an accident there, there's data out there to show that this was going to increase accidents. So what it does is put a lot more liability on the government that installed it in an area where it doesn't meet warrants, because it's proven it's going to increase accidents. Therefore, if you have an accident and the government put it in knowing it would increase accidents, it gives you more justification to sue said government for putting something in that then increased accidents. So doesn't meet the traffic calculations to do a traffic signal, cannot do a traffic signal. We are still moving forward with the roundabout option, but we would like to install the flexi post as a temporary measure. See what that looks like, hear feedback from the community on what that looks like, come back together a few months after they're installed and hear, how's that going? And if that were an option to become permanent, if there's interest in it being permanent, then it would be turned into a concrete median, like you have further down at Honeygo, where the library is, where the parks are, where you have that median that blocks off traffic flow.
And so the question of what if the homeowners don't want to give up the land, or if we just come to an impasse in that area. I think it's one of the reasons we're talking about the flexi posts and these other options as we're continuing to explore the roundabout
That's
option.
correct,
Lauren?
because we need to negotiate with, there's 3 private properties involved on the corners. We need to negotiate separately with each one of those private properties. There's a process where the government gets an appraisal of the value of the property. We make an offer to that resident. There's a negotiation back and forth. And there is the option for them to say no. if that happens, that significantly lengthens the timeline for this project. So we really want to do something to improve the safety at this intersection. The alternative is the flexi posts that would improve the safety of this intersection and don't require acquisition of private property.
Beth, could you put up the flexi post slide again? I heard we will ask to see that. And again, anyone that missed it, we are recording this meeting, so we will have this up on the county YouTube page within a day or so. We'll make sure we share it on other social media platforms as well.
And if you want to go try it in person, the one closest to you that is a very similar situation is Perrine Parkway at Cedar Hill Road in the Parkville area. That's an SHA controlled road intersection because the flexi post, this is the pictures from that intersection on Perrine Parkway. So you can drive over there and drive through it. It's fairly close to the Perry Hall area to see what that exchange looks like.
Beth, can you show that one again, just one slide at a time? The Cedar Hill. And just do the one on the left and then one on the right. You'll can see it from both directions. Okay. Thanks, Beth. Hold on. Oops, sorry. All right, a bunch popped up here, so let me just go back a little more. Was the intersection site distance evaluated for all movements from the crossroad approaches? Honeygo has posted 40 miles per hour. Is the design speed 45 or 50 miles per hour? Can anything be done to improve design speed? Sight lines, I'm sorry. Can anything be done to improve sight lines? More intersection lighting, etc.
In the existing condition, yes, I believe it was. I know for the ultimate condition, we are as well making sure things are clear in the roundabout condition. But it's certainly something that we can do. I think there has been tree trimming that's been done on that median.
Can I ask Lauren, can I ask another question?
Sure.
How quickly can the flexi posts be removed if they prove unpopular?
Removals?
Pretty fast?
Fairly quick. Yeah.
Fairly quick. Okay. Okay. And again, just to reiterate, that study is being done at Gunpowder Farm Road for possible circle. Okay.
For a signal at Gunpowder Farm Road.
Signal.
Yes.
Signal. Yep. Signal. Yep.
I think that's all of the questions that we've had. Is there anything, looking here, I'm sorry, I'm seeing which ones we may have missed here, so a bunch popped up, so I apologize.
I'm seeing who decides
on-
in the flexi post. Well, that's what we're having this public meeting about. We want to hear your feedback. We're hearing it in the chat. I think there's an email address Ron will share to make sure everybody has that. I'm sure, everybody reaches out to Councilman Marks and we will hear feedback through him. The flexi posts were not a popular option a couple years ago when we presented it, which is why they haven't been installed. So we're looking to hear from the community. That's why we're having this conversation, and we didn't just go out and put them in. We are continuing down the path of the roundabout that is funded, and we're on the real estate process of that, but we're offering this option again to deal with the accidents and make the intersection safer.
We'll go back and take a look to see if we missed any questions here. So, Sorry,
Brad, can
guys.
you reiterate the questions you want answered?
Yeah.
Councilman Marks, personally want to thank you for your help in all of this. And those in Bishop's Meadow recognize the work you've been doing. But there are a few questions that have been in here by Brian Wareheim and John Borkowski that I believe are highly relevant. And it's not just saying what's with the flexi posts and what's with the circle, but they're requesting actual real information as to the studies that have been done and how we can improve even sight lines. Because even the sight lines and the maintenance of those are incredibly crucial. And with FlexiPost, I also don't understand how any of us would get out of our development. And now you're looking at us doing U-turns by Angel Park, where there's a lot of kids running around, and then there's fields with lacrosse and soccer and everything. And that just makes more of a headache. And I believe other people will get in accidents there. Please go back and review these questions from everybody. I think they're really helpful.
So I think the primary question we're seeing a lot of is that it seems to be a one-day snapshot of when traffic was captured. At least I'm going through the questions now, and that's what I'm seeing. I will say we've done this, Chris, how many times? 9 times we've looked at it over successive years, that there's just not enough traffic on cross that would generate meeting any of these warrants. So even if we did counts again over like a multiple day period when school is in session, it's the traffic data is still not there to support a signal. The other thing is the crash history in this area. To install a signal, the crashes that are occurring have to be correctable by a signal. The crashes we're seeing out there today are not correctable by a signal. So that is why the roundabout was proposed, was to be able to give people a chance for there to be traffic coming on Honeygo that people on cross can now navigate across the intersection and turn left.
Yeah.
And that's just where we are today, is that it would need to be a 2-lane roundabout, which is impactful to right of way. So we heard from the community, the local neighbors, as we were starting our right of way process, that this is something they are uncomfortable with how close the road would be to their homes now. So we represented the flexi post as an option, and it is something, as Lauren said, we could do in a temporary. We can try it out temporary to see if it resolves some of the issues we're seeing. I think that was the primary question I've seen.
So I'm looking here and see if there's any additional questions that we haven't answered yet. And again, I think the point is that we haven't locked into anything, correct, Lauren? I mean, right now we're gathering community input and seeing what the appetite is for flexi posts or the traffic circle or what have you, correct?
No, I just want to really correct that one. We are locked into the roundabout at this point.
I'm sorry, we're locked into, sorry.
Roundabout is designed. We
Yes.
had a consultant designing it. We are at the stage of real estate acquisition on the roundabout. We have not contracted for construction because we can't do that until we do the real estate acquisition, which is a negotiation process with those private properties.
I apologize.
The flexi posts are what we have not done at this point, and want to hear feedback to see if we do it as a temporary measure and see how that works out. And then we would reassess that and have another conversation. We would continue down the path of the roundabout the whole time, but reassess the flexi post.
We're looking for interim solutions. I'm sorry, I misspoke. No.
Can I make a comment?
Yeah.
Sure.
This question is
Yes.
cool. Virginia, I just want to get clarification on one of your statements a second ago. You mentioned when you reviewed the crashes, I think you said the traffic light wouldn't have. I think I'm probably mixing my words here, but you said that the traffic accidents couldn't have been solved by a light. Is that what you said?
Yeah, the type of accidents we're seeing would not have necessarily been resolved by a signal.
Gotcha.
And it would in
I
turn
think
create more rear end collisions.
okay.
And that's just
I don't
going based off of like highway safety manual data.
Sure. As someone who lives on the intersection and could test the traffic and the accidents there, I feel like the majority of of drivers that are getting in accidents are ones coming from these offside roads of cross trying to get onto Honeygo. And so when they're trying to get across the lane or even to merge onto Honeygo, that is when the accidents occur. So if they had a protected green signal to go and everybody else had a red signal, that could allow those users to cross, which is where the majority of these accidents are happening, is from those users or from the drivers on both sides of Honeygo trying to cross it. And again, I'll just reiterate my point that like I think even if you study the intersection 5 days a year, that's still not sufficient to understand the full like traffic of that road. So I think there should be more done or more days where the study or the traffic is reviewed, because I don't think 1 or 2 or 5 days a year is sufficient. Thank you.
I appreciate those comments. We appreciate you being on here. Maybe we're not doing a good job explaining this. The traffic calculation process is spelled out by the federal government, and then it is adopted into state law in Maryland. So it's not a process that Baltimore County can choose to adjust. We can't choose to make it a 10-day analysis. It's an 8-hour analysis. What we do make sure we do is we pick days to do it where you are seeing that volume. We pick when school's in session. We purposely during COVID redid studies after COVID because traffic patterns were very different during COVID. But the process that we're following, the way that we do the calculations.
In Middle River. Instead, the Air Force is converting the mission to.
Somebody's got the news on. The process that we're following is this federal process that is then in state law that we have to follow, and it doesn't meet that process. So I'm sure if we all, we've got smart people on this phone, if we all got creative and changed the calculations, you could change the calculations to a way that this would meet, but that's not something we are able to do. We have to follow the set prescribed calculation process.
Thanks. Just a quick follow-up though. What about the other intersections like at Wawa where there's no neighborhoods there, but that got a light though? So I mean, like, what are the other studies? How are they different from this one, I guess?
They have to do the same studies. And the difference at the Wawa is the amount of short trips coming in and out. So when they do their analysis, people are in there for 10 minutes filling up and they're back out again. So the volume coming in and out, people don't go there and stay. Like you go home and you stay for 8 hours. People are in and out all day constantly and they're able to meet the volume. So they had to meet the volume too. They had to meet the calculations in order to put the signal in.
Yeah. This is Rick Williams. I'm the president of the Windsor Condominium. We are the largest volume of residents affected by this. A couple points I'd like to make. First off, we are okay with the flexi post installation. However, we do have concerns that might lead to a lot of U-turns being made into our development, and would like to see some way to mitigate those if possible. But I think that the intersection of Gunpowder Farm and Honeygo definitely needs to be studied. And you've indicated that that will be studied, but there is a much higher traffic volume there than there is a half block up the road at across Gunpowder Farm, which on our side of the street is called Brockwell Lane. There is a large volume of traffic coming out of all of the Gunpowder Farms developments. So I think that we really would like to see the results of the study at that intersection. And our long-term preference would be to see a traffic signal at Gunpowder Farm Road and Honeygo rather than a roundabout at Crossroad. With a signal there, keeping the flexi posts would probably be a good long-term solution also. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Williams.
Brandy, you had a hand up. Oops. Are you there, Brandy? Not hearing her. Oh, Bridget. Oh, Bridget, did you have a question?
Hi, so I'm actually one of the landowners as well. And I'm wondering if we could talk a little bit about what the construction of the circle would actually look like. And, you know, will Honeygo be open during that time? Is there any information about what all that would look like and how long the actual construction process might take?
Sure. As of right now, we would maintain traffic in all directions. There might be times of potential detours where we're trying to tie things in, or we're doing paving operations or something that might take longer to cure or something like that. But as of right now, like Honeygo would remain open and would remain open. Probably be doing things like necking traffic down. There might be congestion during construction. We might go to one lane on Honeygo as needed. So those are all situations that you could potentially see. I think our timeline we're estimating is about 2 years, working kind of various quadrants at a time. I don't recall which one we're starting with. And this is also like we can predict and plan, and then a contractor can propose their own plan. So, there are variations that might occur. But this is usually how they're built. We'll like maybe build the outside first, move traffic out there, and then build the inside of the circle, and then open everything up and finish, the touches on the outside, like landscaping and signage and those extras. So overall, hopefully that answered your question with that timeline, about 2 years, and pieces at a time, quadrants at a time.
Yeah, I think I'm just wondering if we're, the flexi post option obviously is, difficult I think more difficult for some people probably in one of the quadrants than the others. But it's like, okay, we're not gonna have the circle for 2 years. So, are we as a community cool with living with the way the intersection is now, for the next 2 years? And then also, what the construction is going to look like and everything like that. I think that if we could have the circle tomorrow, of course we don't want flexi code.
Yeah, and I will also say, just based on my experience at the county, and I previously worked at the state, that sometimes construction changes. If things occur, then we adapt and we might change course, and things might change as needed. So that's not to say that some of these movements might be restricted during construction if they need to be for the safety of the crews, to proceed with installation if there's unforeseen circumstances. So this is, just until we get in there, we don't always know for sure. But we have a pretty good idea of how we're going to construct it at this point in time. Did you have any other questions?
No, thank you.
All right, Brandy?
Hi. Are you able to hear me? Hello.
Yes.
Are you able to hear me? Okay. So one of the things I wanted to point out, and I know the condominiums are very large, but for those of us who are off of Forge Road, that are on the side of Honeygo that meets at Forge and goes down past Crossroad, and there are a lot of people in this area, the flexi posts are going to make it extremely difficult because it's already very dangerous to cross over closer to the new daycare where Forge and Honeygo meet. It's a much more obstructed left turn, even if you were to clear out some of that, the vegetation in the area, which a lot of us are already making U-turns at Angel Park, which again is dangerous, especially when it's sports time and things of that nature. So I just kind of wanted to say, for 2 years or even a long period, I don't think the flexi posts are the best idea for us. I understand they are for other people, but we're kind of landlocked between those two intersections and don't have much options. So that's really all I want to say. I do thank everybody for coming out and talking.
Thank you for your comment. Appreciate it.
All right, I have a couple more questions. Could the regulatory speed along Honeygo Boulevard be dropped to 35 miles an hour through this area, given the safety concerns at the intersection, proximity to Perry Hall Park, and other similar parks? Have any speed studies been conducted since the speed awareness display sign was installed?
I'm going to defer to Angie or Chris on this one.
Speed studies. Oh, go ahead, Angie.
I believe there was a speed study conducted by the police at one point in time. I don't have the results of that study, but as far as lowering the speed, that is something that we could look at, but it has not been proposed before. So we can have our traffic engineers take a look at that.
If the property owners agree, can we minimize their loss by narrowing the sidewalks, or is that a legal standard?
We have looked at minimizing our impacts to right-of-way as much as possible. At that point, it does go with site distance that we have to maintain. And yes, there is a legal standard to sidewalk width that we have to maintain. We are doing some lane narrowing in this area. We're also adding a little bit of curvature, which helps slow vehicles down as they approach the roundabout, so they're not just going straight through and maintaining speed, they are reducing speed. So we have looked at doing some of these measures to reduce our right-of-way.
And just to give some comparison on this traffic circle, this will be the biggest traffic circle that Baltimore County has built. Honeygo is 4 lanes of traffic, so this will be a 2-lane traffic circle. It is smaller than the one in Towson. The one in Towson wasn't built by Baltimore County though, but if you're familiar with the roundabout in Towson, that one is 2 lanes as well, but it has 5 spokes off of it. This one would only have the 4 spokes off of it, so it is slightly smaller than the Towson one, but that gives you some idea of the size of this. So there has to be a turning radius for vehicles of all sizes to get around this roundabout, which is what makes it that large and makes us go into right away into these other properties.
Tom, did you have a question?
Yeah, I did. I'm just curious. Who assesses the infrastructure, the road infrastructure in Perry Hall as it relates to traffic volume, housing? Since I've lived here in 2000, obviously the housing is exponentially increased. Now we've got more developments going up by the Wawa. We've got by Joppa View, Klossmeyer. I mean, who assesses whether these road infrastructure is feasible for the volume that takes place now? And I see right outside my window, the 17 accidents over 5 years seems not accurate because I hear it, I live it. But I'm just curious, who assesses whether these roads and the infrastructure can support that?
Great question. So every single development comes through an evaluation process through the permits and approvals and inspections office is initially where it comes through, but then it's filtered up to Public Works for all infrastructure impacts. So every development individually comes through, goes to our traffic engineering section, our sewer system, our water design, our highway design, our structures design, and we take a look at the impacts on Baltimore County. And then we tell the developer how you solve for those impacts. There's always a solution. Whether or not they want to make that solution and continue with the development is then becomes on the developer. So we do give those requirements as it's coming through that process of what needs to happen on county roads. For state roads, if they're impacting a state road, it goes to the state to review that impact. We have a very close relationship with the permits department. We meet with them every Thursday morning with the design sections for all the sections in DPWT and the permit office to go through all the developments that are coming through that week and make sure we're all in alignment and we're coordinated on comments going back.
Lauren, can I add something too?
Sure.
And in some cases, we do work with the appropriate agencies to make sure that we can have these lights or circles go into place. So, for example, when the Clausmeyer development was proposed, we talked to SHA and said, can we finally get a light there? It met the warrants. And SHA put that light in at Clausmeyer and Bear. So, I mean, there's times we will also do our very best to be proactive.
And also just to mention in a similar vein, down Honeygo where Joppa View is, there's a development going in across the street. We pinged BCPS about that. We also have quarterly meetings between Public Works and BCPS to talk through projects that align. BCPS was already considering making changes to the entrance at Joppa View. So we coordinated with them to make those adjustments in line with where the development was going to be. So it'll make it more likely that that intersection would qualify for a warrant versus having those roads offset from each other. So there is coordination from multiple angles. I know it's not always obvious that that's happening, but there is a lot of behind the scenes coordination to make sure there is infrastructure to handle the need.
RS, do you still have your hand up?
I believe that's me. It's for Juan.
Okay.
I just wanted to thank you for the call. I appreciate it. And as a resident on the on the Chapel side, so between Honeygo and Chapel, I was involved in an accident there. I wasn't the driver. The driver was a Perry Hall resident who was unaware of the risks associated with making the left turn. I just want to, gain some clarity around how the flexi posts would eliminate the issues with left turn and going straight. Is that going to, and I believe I missed some of this, so I apologize. Is that going to prevent drivers from making a left or going straight across Honeygo?
That's correct. So here's the simulation that shows that. If you watch, see that green car was able to make a left from Honeygo. I think there'll be a car that'll queue up on one of the side streets maybe in the simulation. But if you come up to it from cross, you won't be able to go. Here comes a yellow car down cross to the stop sign. And they only have the option to go right. They can't go straight. They can't make a left. So you saw that car just made a right.
Okay. So I do think there are a lot of factors that are associated with the issues there. One, I do agree that speed is a huge, huge factor. And I think something put in place, in addition to flexi posts, the roundabouts, or whatever you guys move forward with, around speed, I think we really, really need to put something in place to slow the traffic down. So if there would be a consideration for that, I think that would be helpful. I personally have kids who are going to be driving in the next few years, and I will not allow them to go cross Honeygo or make that left, because I think you are taking your life into your hands, especially during busy hours.
And I do also see a comment about the paving, and the councilman chimed in. Yes, we're scheduled to pave Honeygo. We needed to make some ADA concrete curb improvements first. So that is happening. You should see that in the area right now. And then in the spring, we would follow back up with paving. I know there is also a water main break that was fixed in the area, and there's some rough pavement around that. We've been coordinating with the city. The city's responsible for water main breaks, to get their contractor back out there to do the final paving repairs in that area. And it is 6 o'clock. Ron, is there an email you can share with everybody?
Beth, could you share the email slide, the last slide? So again, we hope you were able to answer everyone's questions tonight. If we haven't, or if you have additional questions, the email address is right there, highwaydesign@baltimorecounty.md.gov. Again, that's highwaydesign@baltimorecounty.md.gov. And this is just an additional conversation in this process. Like Director Buckler had said, we have the budget for the roundabout. That is something that's going to take time. We're exploring options in the interim to help improve safety, because we understand that this is a major concern at this intersection, and we're going to continue to have this conversation, and we're going to continue to answer any questions that you may have along this process. And again, we will have this presentation online, hopefully within the next day or so, if you've missed any of it.
Thank you all for being here. Thank you for your comments. Please email us comments. And I really want to thank my team for all being here too, to provide this technical information, and Councilman Marks for being here to make sure we are all communicating and we've all got the same information.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone. Take care.
Thank you all.
Thank you all. Have a good night. Be safe.